Here we go. From the Daily Mail, former Proud Boys leader Joe Biggs sobs during sentencing as he's given 17 years in prison over January 6th after begging court not to separate him from his daughter and cancer-stricken mom. Biggs, Ethan Nordine, Zachary Rail, and Enrique Tarrio were all found guilty of the charges after they broke into the Capitol following the 2020 election. Full stop! Fake news! Enrique Tarrio was actually not there. So, yeah, his charges, I don't believe anything to do with him. He was arrested beforehand and barred from the city. Tarrio was not there, so you gotta correct that one, Daily Mail. The judge ruled Biggs was qualified for a terrorism sentencing enhancement. Biggs' sentence is one of the harshest handed out in Capitol riot cases, only behind the 18-year sentence for Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes. Here's where it gets interesting. So this is Joe Biggs. Many of you may know him. He worked for InfoWars. He said, "I know that I have to be punished, and I understand." But he added, "Please give me the chance, I beg you, to take my daughter to school and pick her up. I wanted to see what would happen. My curiosity got the best of me. I am not a terrorist. I'm one of the nicest people in the world." Judge Timothy Kelly wasn't having it, as he said Americans are the envy of the world and U.S. elections must be respected, telling Biggs, "You did play a role in riling up the crowd. If you don't like how an election is being conducted, you can speak out, call, write, or meet with election officials. You can engage in peaceful protest, file a lawsuit." That right there is why I think we absolutely have to talk about this story, because that judge lied. Or he's really dumb. Maybe both. If you peacefully protest like the people who were walking around the other side of the building, they're going to arrest you anyway. If you say sit in front of an abortion clinic, they're going to try to give you 11 years in prison because you peacefully protested. How about this? If you speak out on Twitter, they'll claim it's part of a criminal conspiracy. If you make a phone call, part of a criminal conspiracy. Write or meet with election officials. Not only are they charging Donald Trump, his staff, and legal team for doing these things, they've even criminally charged the election officials that they met with. So this is insanity. 17 years. Why? What did he do? He tore a fence down. Should he have done it? No. Should he have been punished or prosecuted or whatever? Yeah. 2.5 years, maybe a little harsh for tearing down a fence. You take a look at what happened with the far left extremists, BLM or otherwise, nothing. So this is particularly extreme. We have some commentary here. Matt Walsh says, "A man just got 17 years in prison for tearing down a fence on January 6th. Meanwhile, a guy responsible for burning an entire police station to the ground during the BLM riots got only 4 years. No sane person thinks this is justice. But we do not live in a sane world. It is an insane world." And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene has come out saying, Proud Boys organizer Joseph Biggs sentenced to 17 years by U.S. District Judge Timothy Kelly. How many violent BLM riders are serving 17 years? Especially after rotting in jail for the past 2 years, J6ers need to be pardoned. They've been persecuted enough. I have, this is the kind of thing that gives me a sinking feeling, because what I did following the story is I went to look at a few forums to see what the sentiment was among Trump supporters and fans of Joe Biggs. And, it's getting scary out there, because the response from these people is terrifyingly, as I've predicted, the view that the government is illegitimate, law enforcement doesn't exist, and the perception among those who support Donald Trump is increasingly becoming, and for many already is, that these law enforcement officers are no different than a guy in a clown costume. That if a person walks up to you wearing a set of clothes, it doesn't mean anything. They're now saying that this is Soviet-style communist revolution. This is what was happening in the Spanish Civil War. And if this escalates, and likely will, because the far left will not stop, they're going insane. I don't know if they're a zombie horde setting fire to everything around them, just screeching at the top of their lungs, or it's intentional. But you want to know who's at fault for the continued strife in this country? It's not Joe Biggs. It's this judge. 17 years, that's going to freak people out, and not the way they think. Now, here's what I want to add before we just jump into the full conversation. The reason why they gave him 17 years, it has nothing to do with who Joe Biggs is or what he did. It's because of the mob phenomenon. And they want everyone to know that they will throw the book at you and the hammer if you engage in any kind of mob mentality phenomenon. That is to say, often what we see in these riots with the far left, you have a mob of people walking around clueless. One guy will walk up to a door at a store and jiggle the handle and then run away. Another guy will run up within a split second as he's running away and grab the handle and pull the door open. Someone else will see the door being opened and they'll peek their head in. Someone behind him will shove him in. Then people see people going in the building and they all start rushing the building. There was no immediate action where an individual thought to themselves, we should storm this building. And that's what happens with Joe Biggs. He's just there. He has no idea what's going on. Despite the fact that they say that there's communications by the Proud Boys. Yeah, they were saying like, what are we doing? What's going on? He's there. People start taking action and he goes along with it. So they're basically setting an example. We don't care who you are. We don't care what you've done. If you are in the mob, you're going down. And that's why the people who did not get violent and had no idea what was happening on the other side of the building are being criminally charged. The courts have literally told them, because you were part of a mob, you are going to prison.
With Joe Biggs, one of those tweets, was the first tweet you pulled up, said that he's getting, Matt Walsh, 17 years for tearing down a fence. But Kellen, you mentioned before the show, he was also screaming a barricade. He was also yelling for people to go in and to do stuff.
No, I just said they were proud. Like there's videos of him saying, we just did it. Yeah, we were just in there. Like, heck yeah, they were happy.
They were taking selfies inside the Capitol and things like that.
And the video in the court, in the trial, was someone walking up to him being like, we just got in the Capitol. What do you think? And he goes, awesome.
Okay, so he's celebrating.
Yeah. I mean, there's also video of Zachary Rehl, who was also sentenced today. He's getting 15 years, and he was also convicted of seditious conspiracy during this 3-month trial, of him saying, don't go into the Capitol. Don't go in there. And they're like, irrelevant to us. You have to go in because later you threw something at a police officer. I mean, there are things where I can agree, like, it was,
don't throw stuff at cops.
Don't throw stuff at cops. It was out of hand. On the other hand, both of these men have young children, and you're locking them up to prove your political point.
Yeah.
And that's pretty sick.
The metaphor, I think, is like if a bully attacks another kid in school, everyone's like, oh God, you want the bully to lose. So the kid somehow fights back and he beats the bully and he knocks the bully down. Then everyone's like, yay. But if the kid starts stomping on the bully's face and smashing his skull, people will run over and grab the kid and pull him off. The government has gone too far by hitting these guys with 17 years. They're now smashing the skull of the guy. It's unnecessary.
A bit brutal, but I agree.
Extremely brutal what they're doing. And it's going to cause massive it's going to cause sentiment that people are going to start to hate the victim now.
Mm-hmm.
This is right. This is even the Krasensteins are like, we think this is a little bit harsh.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow.
Well, and Kelly is the second judge that has said something to the effect of like, because of you, we no longer have stable elections. And
because of him, it's this judge's fault. I hope everybody you understand that, to throw a point to Ian, who often talks about pardoning your enemies. Now, I don't completely agree with pardoning the worst war criminals of our generation, but there is something to be said of the Chinese finger trap problem in that the harder you pull, the worse you make it. Mm-hmm. And this is the judge being, the judge may as well have looked into the camera for NBC News and CNN and said that his goal is to destroy this country, because the sentiment among those who support Trump is that they are coming for you, they are coming for your families, they are using violence, they are like... The sentiment is not, well, justice was served. It's done the exact opposite. This is radicalizing people because the sentence is psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I was thinking the sentencing disparity that Matt Walsh brought up. Could that be the difference between prosecution and with a federal judge versus like the really relaxed persecution or prosecution that's happening for different states and different cities?
Perhaps, but to the moral question, it doesn't really matter all that much. Right. Obviously, we know that the feds can be more harsh. They tend to win all of their cases, the ones they choose. But it's just when you look at these on the surface of what they are, obviously we can say, bro, if you're going to get into a fight with feds, you're going to lose, hands down. But 17 years for knocking down a barrier? It was one of those like little metal barriers.
Yeah.
So
not good. You shouldn't do it. Well, and I think you'd go to jail for it, but you'd think someone would get like 6-7 months in jail for something like that.
And I feel like I have to point out,
maybe not even that, 2 months.
I have to point out that the Justice Department asked for 33 years in prison, and they asked for 27 for Zachary Rehl. I mean, this is basically sort of half of what they wanted, and it's still, in my opinion, way too much for what happened.
Right. And the one thing I wanted to bring up is you remember the case where the New York City lawyers during the 2020 protests, they were caught with the Molotov cocktails. They got pretty good sentencing from it. So they weren't given lenient sentencing. Not saying that this isn't harsh, but I think I think the feds are making an example quite clearly. And it's unjustified. And like you said, it's radicalizing people as well. So they're making an example while at the same time radicalizing people, which could possibly create the same circumstance that we ended up before. Yep. And I don't think they're they care much about that. Like they're thinking that step ahead. But I think for us who are just analyzing things, that seems like a plausible thing that could happen. And God forbid, like one of these indictments go through with with Trump. That, to be honest with you, I'm not a lawyer, but just looking at the different indictments, they don't make much sense to me.
I think that Biggs' lawyer should file an appeal on the grounds that the judge advocated for criminal activity, that the judge attempted to incite the defendant and his associates and those listening to commit crimes. And incitement to commit a crime is a crime in and of itself. So I believe this judge should be impeached. He should be removed and criminally charged for the crime of advocating and inciting others to engage in election interference and seditious conspiracy. Because he outright said, if you don't like how the election is being conducted, speak out, call, write, or meet with election officials. Well, as we know, based on what happened in Georgia and the federal charges, that's illegal. So I think we're going to have to ask the Republicans to criminally charge this judge.
Trump appointee judge. I'm going to throw that one out there.
I don't care who appointed him.
I think that's what, when I went to cover opening statements, that was what was interesting about sitting with the families, was they were saying like, Kelly is a Trump appointee. He's been more flexible about some things, because a lot of them go into this DC courthouse being like, I am in a hostile city where the jury is already biased against our case, and I have a Democrat appointed judge. They feel doomed from the beginning. And this only affirms this feeling from people who support these people, saying, you know, the government is out to get us no matter what. I mean, 300 people are in jail because of January 6th. Over 1,000 have been charged federally. It just seems like, I can't imagine being a business owner in a city where there was significant rioting during the summer of 2020 and thinking like, wow, I wish someone cared about what happened to me as much as DC cares about what happens to itself. I mean, they experienced so much, there was so much loss there, and yet all of the focus is on these people and one specific day. It seems disproportionate to me.
This is not, it is incredible naivety to think that a 17-year sentence will set an example for anybody. The only example this judge has set is that there is a biased neo-lib, neocon uniparty machine that will destroy your life unjustly if you speak out against them in any way. And of course, that's not me defending what Joe Biggs did in tearing down a barricade and, going into the Capitol or whatever. He should not have done that. I imagine riot charge would be a couple of months or something, maybe followed by probation or whatever. But when you look at the crimes committed by the far left, it is fairly obvious. They're being paid money. When the far leftists rioted in DC and burned and set fire to buildings and garbage in the street and a limousine smashing windows, the city paid them millions of dollars. Paid them after they got arrested. When it's the right at the Capitol, I mean, look, and you've also had the left storm into the Senate and, buildings and bang on the Supreme Court doors and go into the Capitol, all of that. Not a peep, nobody cares. So all that they're doing is setting an example that you have oppressors willing to use force against you to take you from your children. And like, if you look at the forums, is what people are saying, the radicalization is terrifying.
And Joe Biden can do this, and then he's going to say, we're not tough on crime, or we are tough on crime. What are you talking about, San Francisco and New York? We locked all these guys up from J6.
What they're going to say...
We protect democracy.
Right. They're going to say,
that's what we do.
We're battling domestic terrorism. Yeah. Never mind what happens to the cities outside of D.C. Never mind the people who lost their businesses in 2020. We don't care about what happens to them. We care about what happens to us as the head of the government.
This has got to be like they're anticipating riots if they take Trump off the ballot and they want to intimidate people into not rioting, or be like, hey, make an example of Joe Biggs. Don't even think about it. 17 years if you even think about it, kind of thing. But like, you got to understand the damage. It's not, people aren't machines. They don't respond A to B like a computer program. And if you just can't twist this, man. There's a reason that we have this system built like it's built, so that people in the center don't take control.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.